Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 18th the November webinar. So today, just have several updates, and then I will provide more information about the additional funds for assessment. First of all, on the adult intake form, the form that you fill out at intake, under barriers to employment, there is a category ex-offender. That was brought up to me by a legislator, and they requested a change. So after some input from a group of individuals who work with individuals in the justice system who are justice system involved, I got some input, and we are now changing the wording on the intake form is now individual with prior justice system involvement. So that's what's on the form. We have not changed it in eData. So in eData, your data entry people will need to be made aware that what they see on the form, individual with prior justice system involvement, is what they need to enter for ex-offender in eData. The glossary has been updated to make that connection. I do want to clarify that the definition has not changed. So the definition is established by the feds for reporting purposes. And as a reminder, we collect those barriers to employment because we are required to report outcomes for those subcategories of our students. So the definition has not changed, but we have changed the wording on the form. If your program happens to print out copies of the form for people to fill out manually, and you printed out copies with ex-offender, you can continue to use those. You do not need to get rid of those. But it has been changed on the versions of the intake form on the PA Adult Education Resources page. Okay, this is a reminder. We mentioned this in the October webinar. During the COVID shutdown, we delayed the requirement for assessment observation for all of the assessment training courses. Programs who have staff members who completed assessment training under the exception must now complete those observations by March 31st, 2022. All administrators should have received an email from Christine last week that listed the people on your staff who need to complete the assessment administration observations. Attached to that email were the forms that your assessors will need to submit. If you think anyone has been listed in that email in error, please email your advisor and copy Christine. Your staff can begin doing the observations now if they wish, but they won't be able to upload the forms until January. If you have questions about the forms or how to submit them, please contact Callie Hazen. Her email was included in Christine's email. Okay. Oops, sorry. Intake form observations. Okay. Observations, delayed courses, survey. Okay, I thought I accidentally skipped a slide. So each year we have funded programs complete 2 surveys in support of Pennsylvania's federal reporting requirements. All division programs, both grantees and sub-grantees, and including family literacy programs, need to complete both surveys. I will email the survey links to the grantee program contact, who should forward it to the sub-grantees. I have not sent the link yet, still finishing up the surveys in in SurveyMonkey. Please submit your responses by December 3rd. Both of the surveys are very similar to the ones that you completed last year, but there are a couple of changes. So the Adult Education and Workforce Development System survey last fall, Octay gave states a technical assistance guide to help us improve our narrative reports. You had already completed your surveys by the time we got that guidance, and so we didn't make any changes. We didn't add those items in last year's survey. So in order to be able to adjust those new items, we have added several items to the surveys for 2021 to allow us to address that information. For the Adult Education and Workforce Development System survey, the additional items request more information on the one-stop MOU, infrastructure cost contributions, and details on the career services that your programs are providing. We've also revised the question related to the impact of the pandemic and how you've adjusted to that. In preparing for and completing the survey, we ask you to refer to policy G100, which is the Adult Education and the Workforce Development System policy, and the sections of the guidelines that refer to the roles and responsibilities of one-stop partners, career services, and so on. For the Corrections Education Survey, the changes are that we are asking agencies that were able to provide any corrections education services at all during 2020-21 to describe how you provided the services, including intake and assessment, and how you adapted your services to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. Many of you showed great flexibility and innovation in working with the local correctional facilities to make sure that corrections education students were able to get some services. And so, we'd like to be able to collect that and have that available to us to include in the report, and also to be able to provide information to anyone who might ask about that. Someone might ask why there's such a sharp decrease in the number of corrections education students, and we can explain that there were impacts due to the pandemic, but that our programs did what they could to provide services. Now, some of you had previously provided corrections education that was included in your initial grant contract, and you had provided those services in 2018 and 19 and pre-pandemic 19-20, but then you weren't able to offer them during 2021. And if that's the case for you, we ask for details about that situation. So some of you have expressed interest in a course on equity and inclusion, and we were trying to, the division, were trying to decide what that would look like, and who was qualified to offer such a course. When Christine and I had the opportunity to take an equity course as part of the annual state directors meeting. We thought it was well done, and we contacted the developer and asked her to create a course for Pennsylvania. So this course is designed to help all agency staff develop some common language and frameworks for understanding systemic oppression and inequity, as well as understanding the role of power, privilege, and minoritization as they apply to policies, procedures, and practices within your organization. It will be led by national trainers. It is an 8-week course that will include both synchronous and asynchronous activities. We anticipate it will require about 12 hours of work. If your program is interested, you may want to consider sending a pair or a group of staff members so they can have internal discussions and provide support for each other as they go through the course. The course will start in mid-January and enrollment will open in December. When enrollment opens, please take a close look at the syllabus before you or your staff sign up to ensure that you will be able to attend all of the live webinars, as participation in those live webinars is required. We have a limited number of seats for this course, and we want to make sure that whoever signs up is able to commit to all of the sessions. Okay. During the kickoff, I said that the division was going to make funding available to programs to support expanded capacity to administer computer-based versions of the standardized assessments that we use for federal reporting. I sent an email to program contacts with the guidelines and the request form on November 8th. Program contacts, I ask that you please share that email with your subgrantees if you have not already done so. We encourage all division-funded programs to review the guidelines and the proposal and seriously consider how you can take advantage of these additional funds to expand your capacity to do assessment. However, you are not required to request any funds. We will award the funds via funding adjustments to current year grants. Adult education programs will receive additional federal funds. Family literacy programs will receive additional state funds. There will not be any changes to your contracted enrollment. And adult education programs will not have to provide local match for the additional assessment funds. We are not establishing a specific deadline for requesting additional funds for assessment. So if your program needs to wait a little later in the year to decide if you want to request funds, that's okay. However, the Commonwealth budget and comptroller have timelines for finalizing budgets and contracts and funding adjustments and such, which requires them to be approved by April in order to be paid out this program year. So, you know, that's kind of going to be the de facto deadline for being able to request the additional funds, simply because payment won't be approved after that date. So there are two purposes for this funding. The first is to provide programs with the funds to convert from paper-based versions of the assessment to computer-based versions for most students. All of the assessment publishers have conducted studies that indicate that computer-based assessments provide more accurate results. However, the computer-based versions come with a per administration charge. So these additional funds support programs in purchasing the necessary administrations. The second purpose is to establish assessor positions that are dedicated solely to administering the standardized assessments. The goal is to remove the responsibility for pre- and post-testing students from teachers and student support staff. To request the funds, programs will submit a narrative proposal with a budget using the request for additional assessment funds form that was attached to the November 8th email. Programs should work together program staff should work together to develop the plan and address the items in the proposal form. And you should make sure your team includes teachers and the student support staff, because, you know, in many cases, those are the individuals who are currently doing assessment as part of their overall jobs. And so, you know, they should be able to be involved. They should be involved so that they can kind of provide their input on how these funds could best relieve them of those duties. You know, Planning should also include discussions with your fiscal staff to develop a proposed budget that is reasonable and necessary to implement the activities as planned. You'll then email the proposal with budget to your advisor. We will review them and likely request clarification and revisions as needed. Once we are satisfied with the plan and the budget, we will send a notification letter for the funding adjustment and have you complete and submit the funding adjustment in eGrants. As part of that funding adjustment, you should upload the proposed proposal into eGrants. Subgrantees are also eligible for additional funds. Each subgrantee should have its own plan and budget. So that's that form. The program contact from the main grantee will email all of those to the advisor. So, each subgrantee should complete its own request for additional funds form and have its own budget. And then those will be submitted to or given to the main grantee, and the main grantee will submit all of those together in a single email to the advisor. We are asking for that so that we can see everybody's plan for the funds, and we have a detailed budget for all of the subgrantees. In the grants themselves, the subgrantees will not complete the funding adjustments. The grantee will do that, and the subgrantee amounts will be included in the grantee's notification letter. And the funding adjustment. I apologize. I just saw another user took control. I'm taking back control of whoever took it from me. Sorry about that. The subgrantees will not complete funding adjustments. The subgrantee amounts will be included in the grantee's notification letter and funding adjustment. Grantees, you will enter the subgrantee amounts in 1691-320 for each subgrantee. But in order to ensure that we know what each subgrantee is doing and what their budget is like, you're going to need to upload all of the subgrantees' proposals and budgets into the funding adjustment upload section.
Amanda, we have a question in the chat about this.
Okay.
Kathy has a question. Would it make sense to share the position with your subgrantees?
That would depend on you. So if that's something that you think would be worthwhile, you are welcome to put that in the proposal, and we can look at it at the division and decide how to move forward with that. So I'm not going to say absolutely yes or absolutely no, but if you think that that's reasonable, put that in your plan and we can discuss it once we have the plan and the proposed budget. Alice, did that seem to address the question?
I believe so, Kathy. If not, please feel free to. Yes, the answer is yes. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. The only expenditures related to computer-based administration of standardized assessments used for reporting purposes and related to dedicated assessor positions can be charged to these funds. Only be 1691 expenditures, but not for instruction, only for assessment. There's no administrative costs, no data entry costs, no student support. This is 1691 assessment related computer-based administrations and dedicated assessor positions. This is not additional funding for teachers to do their own assessment. That's not included. It's not additional funds for the administrator to oversee assessment. This is purchasing of computer-based administrations and related technology, and we're going over the allowable expenses in the next slides. and staff time for a dedicated assessor. The additional funding can cover costs incurred during this program year from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. If your program has already purchased computer-based administrations this year, you may reallocate those costs to these additional funds. However, any funds in your main grants that are freed up by this funding must be used for instruction. It looks like there was another question, Alice.
There is indeed. Sharon Hagenberger has, is this a one-year option? If we hire any new staff, is it only guaranteed funds for this year?
Okay, I'm going to remind everyone that the adult ed contracts end June 30th, 2022. So nothing is guaranteed beyond June 30th, 2022.
We have an additional question as well. Susan Klosser has, is it okay to write for equipment if we already have dedicated non-instructional staff to conduct assessment?
Okay, I'm getting ready to cover allowable expenditures.
There we go.
So if there are further questions, after I go over this, we can address them. And as always, sometimes your questions are very specific to your agency's situation, in which case it's a good idea to email your advisor with the details, and then your advisor can discuss that, or we can discuss that as a team and get back to you, rather than me just trying to come up with an answer without all of the information. So we have several slides for allowable expenditures. These are in order that they would be in a budget, so that's why they're in this order. You can pay salary and benefits for dedicated assessors. It can be for their time administering assessments remotely, administering computer-based tests in person, taking technology to students for remote testing, helping students set up the technology for taking computer-based tests remotely, conducting assessments during intake and at class sites, pre and post testing, so that other staff don't have to. That last item is the only item in which these additional funds can support paper-based testing. So if your agency is using paper-based testing and you're going to continue to use paper-based testing only, you cannot have any expenditures related to the purchase of any items related to supplies for paper-based testing. But if you have a dedicated staff position who is going to the sites to pre or post test students so that teachers and support staff don't have to do it, that staff member's time can be paid with these additional funds. Also, if you are bringing on a new staff member who has not completed the assessment trainings and the training to do remote administration, the individual's time completing those trainings can also be covered with this additional funding. As usual, any sub-grantees additional funds would be entered in 320, and as I've already indicated, sub-grantees will need to itemize their proposed expenditures in the proposal that you submit to us, and those budgets and proposals will be uploaded into eGrants. You may use funds for contracted technical services only for devices used for computer-based and remote testing. If you have existing equipment that you're going to convert to be used for computer-based and remote testing, and you need somebody to load software or adapt it somehow, that's fine. You can, but it's if you have technology for instructional purposes, that can't be charged. If it's the standard technology that staff use to do their other jobs, that's all covered under your regular grant. If the assessors are traveling, you may reimburse their travel to class sites for pre and post testing to deliver and pick up devices for remote test administration. May purchase computer-based administrations of approved standardized assessments. You may not use the additional funds to purchase paper-based versions, and you may not use the funds to purchase either the HiSET or the GED practice tests. Those are not assessments for reporting purposes, so you may not purchase those. You can purchase supplies that might be needed for computer-based testing, either in person or remote. I think that, if you're in a computer lab for in-person testing, headphones might be necessary. There might be cases that you need webcams for remote testing, things like that. So if there are supplies that you need in order to be able to conduct computer-based administration of assessments, those are allowable. And then you may purchase devices or other equipment for use for computer-based testing. The form that I sent you, for some reason I put 750. There's an error. It's not object code 750. It's 790. So that's just a clarification. Alice, do we have any questions?
We do not have any other questions right now.
Okay. That is the last slide. So I'll leave another minute or so if there's anyone who has any questions. That's a more general one. If not, if you have specific questions as you're developing your proposal, please email your advisor, and your advisors will bring it up in our meetings, and we can discuss it and get back to you. There may be things I haven't thought of.
We do have one more question. Tim Shank would like to know, could you clarify the term dedicated assessor? Can the individual have tasks other than assessment?
No. The idea is this person is available to conduct assessment when assessment is necessary and does not have any other roles that will prevent that from happening when it needs to happen.
And we have another question as well. Do devices could be computers to do the assessments? So I probably could devices be computers to do the assessments, right? Righty?
Yes, can we use the funds to buy
So
computers?
yes, I know Chromebooks are cheap, but it's my understanding that some of the computer-based assessments function much more effectively on other types of devices. So yes, but what I'm going to say is you can't buy a whole bunch of laptops that are used occasionally for assessment and otherwise are being used for staff for work or for instruction. The idea is you're buying devices for the purposes of being able to conduct assessment. Right. So if the assessor needs to go to a class and give an assessment, they're not taking a laptop away from a classroom that's trying to use that laptop. Right? The idea is that these funds are used to make sure that assessment is not just an add-on activity for somebody that you end up having to do, that you have a staff member or members, depending on how large your agency is, whose role is to conduct assessment. It ensures the expertise and experience, but it also ensures that that person is available to conduct assessment when it's necessary, and that people aren't just trying to find time to do it in amongst all their other duties.
Okay, Eve says thanks, so I think that covers that one. We have another question from Kathy. If you have a staff person, non-instructional, and you want to use them in this capacity, in addition to their other job, this is not allowed, even if that other job allows great flexibility of hours?
No, the idea is this is a dedicated assessor.
And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
The question about how much funding is available. We're not putting a cap on it. It needs to be reasonable and necessary for services to be conducted in this program year.
We have one more question. I'm sorry.
This is the last year of a grant cycle. So you should not be purchasing or planning to purchase things for the future.
Okay, one more question from Mindy Tremblay. Would that position require a 4-year degree?
I don't believe we require, I haven't looked at the guide. No, I don't believe we require a 4-year degree for individuals who are doing intake, orientation, and assessment, as long as they're not teaching also.
Any additional questions? Please feel free to put them in the chat, or you could unmute yourself as well. We just have a few minutes left.
Yeah, Alice, I think it's Marianne from LIC. And this may, because we keep going back to the dedicated assessor idea, this might not work, but if you had an employee working from 9 to 12 doing one set of tasks, and then from 12 to 5, they were just going to be totally dedicated to doing assessments. It's almost like they're a separate person at that time. Would that be covered if from that particular time range that all they're doing is assessments?
No, because what that means is they are then not available in the morning to do assessment. And the point is that that person can do assessment when it is needed, when the students are available, when the class is taking place, that the assessment is not guided by that individual's schedule. It is the assessment, that person's schedule is guided by the assessment needs of the agency.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no other questions at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time. I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. And we will see you in another month.
So sorry, we do have one more question that just came up. Cindy Line is asking, I was thinking it would make sense to combine this position with registration duties because not testing would be occurring during registration periods other than initial. That's no testing, okay, because no testing would be occurring during registration periods other than initial.
I'm not necessarily, you would need to discuss that with your advisor, because that is not necessarily the case with all of our programs. So I would need to know more about that plan. So you discuss that with your advisor. Okay. I am going to stop recording.